All right, good day, my friends. I hope everybody is doing fantastic. Welcome to another episode of the Pain and Performance Podcast. Today, we're going to dive into a lot of the questions that I've gotten from patients, from friends, from those of you who've reached out to me on social, of this new series on Netflix called Live to 100 Secrets of the Blue Zones. I've probably gotten 10 to 20 messages, questions, thoughts about this in the last 2 days, which is fantastic. If you haven't seen it, this is a limited series on Netflix, Live to 100 Secrets of the Blue Zones, hosted by Dan Buettner, where he goes around to some of the major blue zones around the world. And a blue zone, if you're not familiar with it, is an area where there's a very high percentage of people who live to 100. And we've studied these little areas, these some isolated communities, to figure out what are they doing differently. And I think this is a wonderful series because it gets into some of the very tangible and tactical things that they're doing, but it also gets into some of the other things that maybe we don't think of quite as regularly. And I think that's where I'd like to start some of this. One of the major takeaways, I'm going to go through and kind of what are the areas where these groups overlap, where do they kind of separate themselves from each other, which is all good. But one of the things that you take away immediately from watching this is that a lot of these people have a very large focus on living and having fun and laughing and getting the most out of their time instead of focusing on just lengthening the time of their lives. And that seems somewhat counterintuitive, but one of the takeaways that you get when you watch this is like these people are not necessarily heavily focused on longevity in terms of I need to do all the things to lengthen my life. They're trying to improve their daily life, and as a byproduct, they lengthen their life. So, when you look at this, the first stop is Okinawa in Japan, which is a major blue zone. There one thing that comes through immediately is that there's lots of laughter and fun in the community, and they want that. There's lots of purpose in the community. Is how do you create that purpose? And that's a takeaway that carries into many of these cultures. You look at Okinawa, they eat lots of natural whole foods that come from their environment, and they move a lot. They're walking a lot. They get on and off the floor. It doesn't matter how old you are. You're getting on and off the floor for many life activities. And I thought about this. We had our staff meeting, and I was sitting on the ground, and I was like, how often do adults in Western countries get on and off of the ground in a day? There's many, many people who will not do that at all in a 24-hour period. And maybe it's like once a week. Well, of course, we're going to have trouble with falls, with balance, with strength. We're not using our body that way. And then in one of the little kind of snippets of it, there's a guy who's like, you have to work on speed. No matter how old you are, you have to work on speed. And so you see him kind of like jumping up and down from like a squatted position to like legs crossed, and he's holding himself with his arms. You'd have to see it. But I thought it was a very interesting thing in how much they want to be able to continue to function really well. And then it's built into their environment around how they live day to day, and that makes them have a better daily experience, and they feel better and they move better throughout that day, and it just translates to longevity. And this is something that I write about quite a bit. It's not the focus on longevity that we want. We want to focus on improving our quality of life today, and the byproduct of that will be longevity. As we kind of continue to go through this series, you'll start to see some big takeaways. I do encourage you to watch it. I think it'll inspire a lot of you in some interesting ways. I think there's only maybe 4 episodes. It's only maybe 3 hours or so. And he goes basically around the world. Okinawa, then Sardinia, then Loma Linda, Ikaria, and Nicoya. And when we look at what's going on, what are the big overlaps of these things? The first one is that there's this big laughter and happiness component that comes along with it. I'm going to just kind of lump all these together. Go watch it. You'll see how it kind of separates from different cultures. But if we're trying to use this in our own lives, we know that, taking something as silly, if you'll pardon the pun, as laughter reduces stress, releases hormones that improve our overall health, and it gives us, this improvement in outlook, in mindset. We don't get stuck kind of ruminating on things. And so just cultivating that laughter and happiness kind of mindset is extremely important, I think, to setting the tone to a lot of the activities that we see in these blue zones. Every single one of those cultures that they talk about prioritize whole natural foods. So when we emphasize unprocessed foods, fruits, vegetables, naturally grown whole grains, and we start to avoid the processed sugary foods that are shown in every society to increase the risk of chronic disease, we improve our health. The one thing that I'd like to point out is that I think it's the additive component of natural and unprocessed foods like many fruits, vegetables, and whole grains, and it's much less the avoidance of meat and animal products. When you look at the studies that say if we have a diet that's just high in meat but low in vegetables, it does show an increase in health issues. And when you see a diet that is high in natural whole vegetables and low in meat, it shows a decrease in risk factors. And so everyone uses that as the guiding principle. Oh, we should avoid meat. Well, when you look at the study that increases vegetable, whole grains, fruits, and animal products to get all of the amino acids that we need, and we elevate both of these natural healthy things, guess what happens? We get the best of both worlds. We get this response where there's not an increase in risk factors and there's an improvement in longevity and decrease in diseases. So a lot of these will make it, and even in this series, they make it sound like the research says if you avoid meat and you eat vegetables, then that's the way to go. They're picking one part of the research. The research does say, and I absolutely believe it, we should make a priority to get more natural foods like vegetables, like naturally grown whole grains, like fruits, and we should avoid all processed things as much as we possibly can. But that doesn't mean that we should avoid, animal products, protein, meat. Those things can be a vital component to it. Do they need to be, a huge part of what we're taking in terms of like, that's all we should eat? That's not what the research says. But should they be completely avoided? No, that's not what the research says either. So sorry for the tangent this early in the podcast, but I know that was one of the questions and comments that I got from so many people who have seen this. Another thing that jumped out, to go back to the mindset thing of laughter as I'm thinking about this, is that there's purpose and meaning throughout the whole spectrum of life. And that is something that I think we fail at as Americans very highly, is that we have a very strong purpose and meaning throughout our early and middle stages of life. And then it's almost talked about and insinuated in a lot of ways that once we pass that kind of prime age, that there is no longer a purpose. It's just, you're just kind of waiting, you're there. When you look at a lot of, you're in one of these, they're just waiting to die is kind of the example that is used in this. In a lot of these cultures where people are very active, they're very happy, they're contributing to society the whole time. They're doing activities, they are sharing knowledge, they're sharing experience, and they're respected in all of that information. And I think that's a really important thing. Somewhere in us, if we don't know what our purpose is and what we're trying to do when we wake up, something, that fire starts to die a little bit. And that really does create some problems in terms of our drive to get better, our drive to keep doing some of the hard things that it takes to stay healthy, which is embracing natural movements and activities. So in all of these, they are incredibly active in every one of the blue zones that they go to. There's not a single one where the people are not walking a tremendous amount every day. This is where our kind of 10,000 steps idea comes in, where they're not getting on unlevel surfaces and doing difficult tasks and activities that work into balance and stability movements. Like I said, the Okinawa, they get on and off of the ground 30, 40, 50 times a day. Those are challenging the body in a way that stimulates maintenance, that stimulates improvements in function and strength and mobility, range of motion. And we know, we've talked a lot about how much improving the physical aspects of our health improve the mental aspects of our health and give us higher quality life. So if we can move better, we have better balance, we're stronger, we can go out and contribute and talk and share more. And I'll come back to that in a little bit. But, that gives us the ability to stay active in our daily lives. And that really does drive a lot of the other factors. So we can't lose that. No matter what's going on, I think one of the biggest things, whether you can tweeze out dietary factors in all of these, the one thing you cannot tweeze out is their activity level. In every blue zone, the activity level is there. And I think that's one that we should make a priority. We have a difficult time here because their environment gives them the ability to walk, to move, to travel on foot from their homes to restaurants to stores. That's a really difficult thing in the current kind of westernized environment. And we have to manufacture it at this point. We have to make it. It's not built into our environment. As you go through this series, they talk about some of the changes that cities should make. And I would love city planners to take a look at that and really dig into it. If we care about the future of our society, we talk all the time about healthcare and education is what improves an area, the citizens. Watch this. If we're not doing some of the things that they talk about, making cities more walkable, making it easier for people to get to community spaces, making it easier for people to get to activity, exercise areas, and encouraging those things, then we are 100% decreasing the health span and lifespan of our citizens. And so I think it's a very big part is that we now, until we can make some of those changes, need to be very intentional about creating that in our lives. And so I'm going to incorporate a lot of differences. We've got a few little things around me that I can walk to. And we're just going to start getting to the point where anytime we need to go to these 4 places at least, we're going to walk there, because we have to start to create the habit, and you have to build the habit. Despite the fact that maybe our environment makes it a little more challenging. We don't have the big sidewalks. We don't have big walkable areas and green spaces in every kind of city that's already built around freeways and roads and cars. And so we just have to, for a little while, until we can make these changes, just build it into our lives. Find some places, find some stores, find some activities that you can do that are creating that in your day, where you're walking, where you're getting out of the house and you're moving and you're not jumping straight into the car and sitting more. So it was a big aha moment. You watch this and you're like, our environment, and Dan Buettner does a great time. If you want to change people, does a great job explaining this. If you want to change people's health span, their lifespan, change their environment. we can either move or we can intentionally change the environment around us. Maybe both in some areas. If you're in an area where it's just not possible and you want your family to live a healthy life, maybe it is time to consider making a move. And I think in today's world where we have access to work and to do a lot more things without being in person in certain areas, it's probably easier today to go and find these communities that give you this life that you can enjoy and have fun and get the most out of every day and live longer. It's easier to do it today than ever, I think. So, and on that level, this is where these things start to kind of really tie in. All of the cultures that we look at that are blue zones have a very strong family and community tie. So those connections, I think, lead to a lot of other things. They lead to purpose. They lead to close relationships and social connections where we have deep love and a very strong reason to be here as long as we possibly can, sharing and teaching the next generations to do the things so that they can pass that down, and this just creates this massive ripple effect. Me being in South Louisiana, this is something that I do think we do well, is that we do have close-knit families. We do have strong community connections, and we do donate time and help each other out. The difference in some of these is that they try and do it in a little more of an active way. There's a lot of the kind of activities they do together that might not be drinking and eating. I know, it's a crazy concept. So we're close on that, but can we just kind of tweak that a little bit where we're doing more community, family activities, but we're being active with it? But either way, nurture that strong kind of family connection, nurture that strong community, and it helps everyone to improve their quality of life and their longevity. And this series does a wonderful job of showing that. The bigger thing that I took out of some of this in terms of mental health is that a lot of the cultures that we look at that are blue zones do a really good job of balancing and managing stress. So it's not that they avoid it completely. They don't live these like perfectly blissful lives. And in some of these areas, they do have quite difficult times in terms of work and growing their own food. And there is like these intermittent stressful activities. But what they do a wonderful job of is managing chronic stress, managing long-term stress where it stays. And that's something that everyone needs to improve. So what do we do to manage stress levels, and how can we do that? And this is something that's like, ties very closely in. After a stressful day, if you got home and you had a family dinner that's full of laughter, or you get home and you're working in the garden, at a slow pace, hey, I'm doing a couple things, I'm pulling some weeds, and you got family around and everybody's kind of chit-chatting about the day. Like, those are these de-stressing activities that can be very, very helpful, that kind of blend a little bit of activity, that blend some laughter, that blend some family and community activities, and help to reduce our stress. So I think figuring out what that means to you is the important takeaway of that, but really starting to create some ways of managing stress and getting some balance. Many of the cultures, it seemed like, to me, my takeaway was like they wake up and they've got some focus, they've got a purpose for the day, and they work really hard at that purpose. And then when they've done a good day's work, and a lot of them, it seems like it's a little bit earlier, then they shift to social, family, community. And there's no, I feel like I should be doing this. No. I got up this morning, I did my work. It's 3 PM. Now I'm going to meet my friends at the, kind of local watering hole, and, we're going to play games and laugh and dance and, do everything together. And we're not worried about, what we should be doing. Should we be working more? No, we'll do that tomorrow and do it again. So I think it's this kind of balance of work hard, create these kind of playful activities that help us manage stress and have these life balances and have the time for these social connections that so many of these blue zones show we need to have to live a long, healthy life. I've talked a lot about physical activity and exercise for longevity. I think that's episode 61 if you want to go back to that, and how do we kind of check all of the boxes in terms of cardio, strength, mobility, and stability. The interesting thing about a lot of these cultures is they do that as part of their daily activity in a lot of ways. I think the one that's probably the most intentional about it is Loma Linda, where they do have a lot of people that go to community centers to work out, to play, to swim, to play tennis, to exercise. So the nice thing about that is it shows the varied ends of the spectrum. So if you look at Nicoya, for example, they do a lot of things by hand. They create a lot of things. They carry, they harvest, they work very strongly and have this like purpose in life, but it's built into their day. Then you go to Loma Linda, where they have to be more intentional about it. Their environment is not, such that they need to be going out and harvesting food and, creating meals by hand and doing all of those things. It's less in the environment, but it still works. It still helps them live great lives and have a very good lifespan and health span. So that's very nice, because I think a lot of people listening to this are not going to be in areas where you are forced to do things by hand. You're forced to walk to work. You're forced to go harvest your food on your own and make it and create it and process it. So we have to be intentional about it. But at least when we look at these blue zones, it says, hey, if it's built in your life, fantastic. You kind of have the upper hand because this is just your daily life. If it's not and you're intentional about it, great. You can still accomplish the same thing with a focus on going through all of these areas to improve your life, focusing on activity, finding purpose, prioritizing whole food, cultivating laughter and happiness and connection. It was an eye-opening thing to see that we can come at it from either way. The nutrition part, I'm at least going to mention the things that I see. We talked already a little bit about the whole foods and making sure that is a major priority. I think in this, a lot of times subtracting certain foods is probably better. The one thing you see when you look at all of these cultures is that they limit a lot of the sugary sweetened beverages. They don't have a lot of like processed beverages or anything like that. And that's not to say they only drink water. A lot of them still drink tons of herbal tea. Y'all know me. Y'all know I love my tea. So that's great. That's a fantastic thing to see, that they are adding these herbal concoctions in there that are really, really, helpful in terms of health. And, a lot of them carry antioxidants. A lot of them carry anti-inflammatories. A lot of them carry a lot of these health agents like sage, rosemary. A lot of them are kind of these, little concoctions that everybody hears of that are so healthy. They just do it as part of their daily activity. And a lot of times they're not using regular sugar at all or processed sugar at all. They're using natural local honey. And I think that gives them, if we're going to have some of the sugar component, at least get all the antioxidants, get all of those kind of natural components that can come from a local honey. So you look at it, and I think some of it is that they avoid the right things and they replace it with good things. So if we avoid sugar, if we avoid processed foods, and then we substitute high quality whole foods, such as vegetables, local vegetables, such as local, naturally grown whole grains, such as local, natural fruits, natural, unprocessed meats. I think if we substitute those negatives with those types of positives, we are doing what a lot of the blue zones do. Adding in nuts, adding in good oils, olive oil, all of these things, if that's the stuff that we're putting in the diet in place of some of the processed sugary foods, you are checking the box. You are doing the right nutrition for today to feel amazing and for tomorrow to live longer. So that's the big thing that I see a lot in terms of making some of these small changes that we can do. One thing that they talk about towards the end of this is to embrace some sort of faith and spirituality. And I know that's going to be a little bit controversial. Some people are going to say that, it doesn't need to be there or they could have left that out. But I think what Buettner's doing is, let me take all of these and see what they do and what things overlap. And in all of these, they have some sort of belief in why we're here, what we're supposed to do. And for a lot of them, that does come from a spirituality. But what I think we should take away with that is that we should figure out what that means to us. What does that mean to you? Why do you see, or what do you see as your purpose here? And where does that come from? However we explain that or describe that to other people, I don't know if it's as important as how we have sat and thought and discovered that for ourselves. So that was a very, very kind of central component in a lot of these cultures. So we just need to make the decision for ourselves and have that thought process of, why am I here? What's my purpose? What do I want to accomplish? What do I want to be doing? What do I want to share with others? How do I want to help the people around me? And then where does that come from in terms of kind of a higher power? And I think that gives you the spirituality component. I think everybody has that in some way. It's just maybe the language that we use sometimes kind of turns us off towards each other, and it doesn't need to. But it is something that is very important to find our purpose for being here. Why do we live longer? Why do we have healthier lives? That's so that we can share more. We can do more with others. We can, create a bigger impact in those around us. And, isn't that what it's all about? And that's what a lot of this is in terms of what we're doing, what we're trying to improve. So to kind of wrap this up, I'm going to go through a couple of the areas. So if you look at the breakdown of what all of these cultures do, the first one is they move more naturally throughout their lives. They walk more. They try and have a garden. They work in it. They get outside, and they do a few more things by hand. They try to have natural movements built into their day. Again, I think we may have to be intentional about this, but just creating these opportunities to move naturally more. They have a great outlook on life. They unwind better. A lot of them, and one of them, my favorite little moment, they asked the woman, what's the best thing to drink? And she said, or what was the best healthy tea to drink? And she said, wine. And it shows you, like, we can have fun with this. It doesn't have to be this strict thing. And I think I'll take a quick moment. That's one of the things you see on this is there's just not this big, like, let's just like do all of this exactly right to live longer. It's like, no. We're not going to get it all right, but we're going to have fun and we're going to enjoy everything that we can. And that part means that we actually did get it right. So anyway, they unwind better. Again, they have a faith of some sort and they have purpose. A lot of them talk about the purpose in language in certain ways. Whenever you go, they have a life plan, plan de vida, the plan of the life, and they have this clear goal, these meanings and these motivations in their daily life to do things. And so finding that purpose is very important. They have a wise nutrition plan. So they eat lots of plants and whole foods, natural foods. They do drink wine. They eat in moderation. So they're not over consuming foods. They're eating the right things and they're taking out the wrong things. So, eating wisely, and they connect. They have a lot of family around them. They have great partnerships throughout their whole life. They find good partners to share activities with, love with, community with. And they have a good tribe around them. They have like this close-knit, continuous social circle that they do things with and they talk with and they go through. And then the last episode is, how do we talk a lot about building this into our communities? And if you know a community leader or someone who makes decisions, I think we should all watch that. I know I'm kind of circling back to it, but if we can change the environment in a lot of our cities, communities that create more activities and areas for us to get together, walkable neighborhoods where we're walking to a walkable community center where we have gathering areas for people to get together and see each other, more green spaces and more activity and more activities that people can do together as a community, it will have a serious impact on health and longevity. And that is something that we should all continue to strive for, because it does improve all aspects of our life today. And I think the one thing that I'll leave you with, the major takeaway from some of this stuff, is that the more you do to make you feel better today and tomorrow, the better you're going to live, the longer you're going to live, the better your health span is. How long are you healthy in this life? And it seems that these are not completely separate things. The more we do one where we improve the lead domino of, let me improve my health, my happiness, my activity, my nutrition today, I'm going to feel better. I'm going to enjoy life more. And piggyback on that, I'm going to live longer, as these blue zones show. So with so many questions and so many people talking about this, I thought I would put a little breakdown. I hope you check out the series. I think Live to 100 Secrets of the Blue Zone is very eye-opening, a very good series, and hopefully inspires a lot of people to start picking up and doing the small things. We don't have to do all of it. Just do that one thing to get a little healthier today, and let that create the momentum to propel you forward to a better life. So I hope everybody has a great day. I hope you enjoyed that. I will see you next week on the Pain and Performance Podcast.